Welcome, friends. It's good to catch up with you along the trail again this evening. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoy about being out on the trail, sometimes alone, is the opportunity it gives me to simply remember things. One of the more amazing things about being a human being is that we can create memories. We can store those memories in our brain, and then we can recall them and savor those moments in the past once again. When I'm out on the trail, sometimes I'm mystified by the things that I do remember. For example, I can recall vividly my elementary school friend, Billy Turner. We were in the same class from the first grade through the sixth grade. Billy was an amazing student. He was the best reader in our class. And on the playground, he and I were the two fastest boys from fourth grade on. Once, when I was in about the fifth grade, I spent the night at Billy Turner's house. It's a night I'll never forget. I won't forget it because we roamed all over town to midnight. That was the latest I'd ever stayed out in my entire life. In fact, when I was at home, I usually went to sleep during an episode of The Rifleman, which came on Channel 7 at 7 o'clock in South Carolina. I often remember my friends, the times we shared together, from my childhood up to my most recent memories. I guess most often I remember people and my encounters with them. I remember people I went to school with. I remember people I worked with. I remember people I encountered in very interesting situations. I remember meeting Jacqueline Smith. Perhaps you recall that she was one of the original Charlie's Angels. Well, one day, Rita and I were down in New York City with our friends, Betty and Woody Rock, just spending a day in the city. At some point, we wandered into Macy's. Betty and Rita took off to look at whatever women look at, and Woody and I were just sauntering through the store looking at this or that, nothing in particular really. In our wanderings, we came upon an old-fashioned baby carriage. And as we peered into that baby carriage, we saw a little boy. He wasn't quite a little boy, he was a good-sized boy. And we started talking to him. We started jiggling the carriage a little bit. And in a few moments, a woman came from around the display, smiled at Woody and I, took the carriage and pushed it on away. As she was leaving, Woody and I saw Rita and Betty coming toward us. They were asking us, "Did you recognize who that was?" Of course, we didn't. Then they informed us that it was Jacqueline Smith of Charlie's Angels fame. Woody and I argued with them. That woman was too small to be any one of the Charlie's Angels we saw on the television. So, I remember interesting situations. I remember with great fondness an old man named Charlie. He lived in an old house that stood near a trailer that Rita and I lived in the summer that Rita was great with child and craving watermelons. Charlie and I planted some watermelon seeds. We had an amazing process of planting those seeds. We dug a hole deep in the ground, and we got some of that unique fertilizer with that strange aroma from the barn and mixed it all in the earth and planted our seeds and covered them not only with earth but with straw. Unfortunately, that summer it was very, very dry. And I don't recall a single melon we got out of that patch that was edible. Yet I suspect that in the history of the world, no watermelon patch received more tender, loving care than what Charlie and I gave that patch that summer. Charlie had lost an arm in a farming accident, but it hadn't slowed him down one bit. He had made some devices that helped him do with one arm and hand what he once did with two. Charlie was in his 80s, and he walked outside a lot, walking over the ground. Most any time I saw him late in the evening, I could holler at him and say, "Charlie, how you doing?" And his reply was always the same. "Well, I'm going to make it home for supper." Perhaps you can tell that for me, one memory leads to the next memory. And all of these memories are good, enriching my life. Because people, good people, ordinary people, have made deep impressions upon my heart, my mind, and my spirit. It, for me, is a special blessing to recall a memory and savor it at any moment along the way. For that reason, I've chosen for our word to throw into our backpack this week as remember, which appears now on your screen. But I do recognize that remembering is not a life-enhancing or enriching thing for some people. I realize that some people have memories that flow from the negative events that have happened in their lives. My mother was like that. Almost all of her memories rose from some negative or bad event in her life or something bad that had happened to her. For example, if I asked my mother, "Mama, tell me what happened in 1976. Her first response would likely be, "1976. That was the year your Aunt Essie died." Or she might say, "1976. That was the year I spent 3 weeks in the hospital." Giving her a few moments to remember all those negative things, I would follow up and say, "Don't you remember, Mama? 1976. That was the year your first grandson was born. That was the year Chip arrived." And so I realize that there are many people like my mama who remember things not from deep, enriching places in their lives, but from darker places. I do wish that everyone's memories rose from a light and hopeful place, but I realize they don't for everyone. Now, remembering is also a critical element of the life of faith. In the Scriptures, we find the word remember countless times, almost 240 times, with a constant refrain, "Remember the Lord, remember the Lord, remember the Lord." I have found that when life refuses to lie down and behave for me, it is a good thing to remember those times when I was deeply aware of the presence of God. Those times when the Holy Spirit came to comfort and sustain me. Those times when Jesus came to walk alongside me through the dark and dreary and difficult days. Remembering the past with God has helped me get through many trials and difficulties with God. When we are on the journey of faith, there are long stretches of the trail that we only get by remembering God's presence in the past. For that reason, I have chosen some words written by David, inspired during a very difficult time in his life. Now, this verse from Psalm 143 will appear on your screen to help us to recall the importance of remembering. I remember the days of old. I think about all your deeds. I meditate on the works of your hands. With those words guiding us, let us take a few moments to reflect on remembering. When you are alone, what kinds of things do you remember? What do you remember most? People or events? When you remember events of your past, are you more likely to recall pleasant events or unpleasant ones? When you remember the events of your life, what is one of the most meaningful events that continues to reach from your past to encourage you today? Do you ever remember sad events in life or difficult times that somehow possess the power to comfort and encourage you in the present? What kinds of people and what kinds of relationships do you remember from your past? Are you able to remember 3 people from your past whose affirmation you continue to recall and to savor? Do you remember their names and their words or actions that blessed or inspired you? Do you ever ponder how you think your children will remember you or your closest friends? Is there a person or event in your life that you remember when life gets hard? Do you remember times when God felt as close as your very breath? Do you remember times when it felt like God was light years away? Do you remember those people and events God used to direct your path toward hope, joy, and peace? Do you remember the person who has most represented the presence of God in your life? Hopefully, there has been someone. And now, a word of wisdom. Remember the people and events that inspired you and blessed you, and let everything else go. I'm grateful that we've had this opportunity tonight to share a little stretch of the journey of life and faith together. And if out on the trail you see me up ahead, sitting on a rock or leaning up against a tree and looking out over a valley or a stream, think that I'm probably there remembering. And maybe I'm remembering something about you something that happened between us, something we enjoyed, a story we tell and continue to tell. But I'll be remembering, and those memories will enrich and enhance my living. So, until we meet again on the trail, I hope you have a wonderful time remembering things that enrich your life.